Hi, everybody. Welcome to our final panel, which is a conversation, an artist conversation. I'm Auryn. If you missed it earlier, I am a furry filmmaker. I made the film Ruckus. I'm also a co-curator. Thank you. Hey, it's pretty good. Check it out. I'm also a co-curator of Room Party and one of the organizers of the conference. And before we get started, I just want to say today has been so amazing. Thank you to all the presenters. It's making me think. I want to say last month, September, was 20 years since my first furry convention. And I wish I could recapture the feeling of seeing that for the first time and not knowing really what to make of it. And it was kind of weird. It was a little off-putting. It was really attractive. It was a weird mix of things. And I saw something that was like so big and so special in it, and that something was happening between the people there. And I've wanted to put it in words for 20 years, and I think all of you are trying to put it into words too. And it's just amazing to see that, like, here we are doing something like this and thinking that deeply about this thing that we love. It's been really amazing. Thank you to all the presenters. I just want to say that. And then I think I will pass it to Atmus for an intro, and then we'll let all the artists introduce themselves. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I am Atmus, or Addy, or Tommy Bruce, under various names. I am also an artist, and I've been making art about being a furry since 2010, and it is likewise surreal for me. So yes, we're here at the end of the day. Surreal for me is normal words. To be here in this kind of space, when, you know, if I went back to, like, in a time portal to 2010 me and was like, this is gonna happen, I would probably blow up. So really cool, a good blow up. And yeah, I think, like many of you, I feel like a plant that has had like 10 pounds of plant food dumped on my head. You know, I think a lot of what I have seen here, I'm going to continue to kind of, you know, gain nourishment from for a long time. So it's very exciting, but also very overwhelming. And I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us through all of this. This has been, yeah, a really, really amazing high-speed roller coaster of big words and big feelings. So, yeah, this maybe just to introduce the idea of this panel too. We call this state of the art. You know, thinking about you know, furry art right now and what's happening in it, and like, why is it important? And you know, my personal bent has for a long time been to try to, like, think about you know, like, furry art as a serious, you know, like, whatever, fine art kind of experience or medium or genre. And I think that, you know, now that I think that's complicated, you know, how much do we actually want to you know, assimilate into that sphere? But I do think that we are finding our own way to kind of be recognized as legitimate without shaving off the edges of you know, what makes us who we are and what makes this culture interesting and worth looking at, worth studying. So yeah, all that to say, this is very exciting. So we are very lucky to be joined by 4 artists here on our panel, and we're gonna go down the line with some introductions, and then we have a couple of questions for everybody, a couple of questions for individuals, and then hopefully some time for questions from the audience at the end of that. And then after that, we will have our closing remarks. That will be the end of the conference after that. Woohoo. And yeah, so I will pass us down the line to, yeah, we'll start with, sure, yeah.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hi, my name is Zephyr Kim. My persona fandom name is Theory. I got a BFA in sculpture at the University of Oregon and an MFA in sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Art or Rhode Island School of Design. I know the name of the school I went to. I kind of, my background in regards of furry where like I was very much like a furry kind of lurker for most of my life, and kind of through art school there was always like a sort of through line of that trying to come through, even though it was I found it difficult to sort of engage with like furry kind of more seriously in my work. Kind of like I think there's a lot of fears and things that a lot of folks experience with, feeling sort of like alienated or something in the kind of fine arts context, so it's been kind of like a long journey of that, of trying to feel more comfortable, like and being more open about like how I believe. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Furry art has like to offer in terms of like understanding the world around us. So some of the work up here, this is, oh, great. Oh, either is fine. Perfect. So a lot of the work, this is kind of more recent work with inflatables. And you can see this kind of like sculpture on the left there where I was using a lot of foam. This was like, I was kind of like hoarding fursuit materials as I was like in undergrad and, trying to use those as like, in kind of this roundabout way to kind of talk about these like transhumanism and these concepts. Anyway, we'll go more in depth with that later. All right.
Who's next? I think I'm next.
Zephyr
Thank
also has a sculpture right back there.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name's Jesse England, or Redactor, or Outside Wolves. I make art in sort of, I'd say 3 modes of existence. I've been making sort of photographs and videos and films, and that led to a master's program where I focused on media art, which sort of end up as like sculptural spectacles, so to speak. The 2 best-known examples are Sincerity Machine, a type writer that I've altered to type in the Comic Sans typeface, and ebook backup, which is a manually backed up copy of my Kindle copy of George Orwell's 1984. And this sort of work, I very much enjoy making it. I make like one of these pieces a year. But it's saying something really hyper specific about media and generational changes in how we access information, and kind of limited in what you can say with that. In furry art, I'll sometimes make longer form comics, which typically touch on more serious reflections on my upbringing, and hope to make more of those in the future. But like 3 or 4 times a week, I'll draw silly cartoons or doodles or shorter comics, and I enjoy making that and sharing it with you all very much. Next is.
Hi, I'm Julia. My artist name online is Cato Nine Tails. I am a cartoonist and a musician. I've been kind of like drawing furry stuff in my sketchbook probably since like late high school, but I didn't like really tell anybody. I was just kind of like, in the closet for being a furry, like honestly. And then I just started posting more of my art when I felt like more understanding of who I am as like a person and an artist and everything. I like drawing my persona a lot because before I used to just like do autobio comics, and that would just involve drawing yourself a lot. But I figured that the more it feels more like me is like when I draw myself like a dog. It just feels more like me. So that's kind of what I try to do when I do my drawings and everything. I have the artist name Kato Ninetails, honestly, because I thought it sounded like a cool like weapon name, so I just chose that as a name. But like, there's like a juxtaposition of it a bit because it's like I'm not like a cat, I'm a dog, and I've had a lot. I think it's like kind of like it's kind of like an inside joke for me because I feel like a lot of the time I'm mistaken for different things in my life in various different ways. And I think it's fun to play with that in art, basically. It's like self-expression with drawing furry stuff just feels so freeing. It's so cool to see other people's work and everything. These like comics that I make, half of like some of them is like based on my real life. And some of it's just totally made up stuff, but I like to draw other people as funny animals because it brings me a lot of joy. I think it's funner than drawing humans. I think in the furry world, you get to really play with a bunch of different ideas of how you interpret the world and everything, and how people can express that in their art. And I try to do that. And these are some slides from a cartoon that me and my friend worked on. And it was like a gift to be in a cartoon like this. And I'm hoping to make more, basically, where I can have more cartoons of me as a funny dog. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. I'm Willow Etches, and I make and post art under the name Glopossum. And I have been awake for 36 hours, so please go easy on me. Most of my work takes the form of long-form pornographic comics that deal largely in part with or concern the sort of relationship between gender and sexuality and kink and community and all these things that as a queer person I have grown to deeply value and feel the need to represent as a part of myself. Yeah, that was concise, I guess.
Okay, cool. We've got one here.
Yeah, I just want to say before we start with questions, my hope for this panel is that it can be a conversation between the artists that is useful for all of us as well as the audience. So please feel free to ask each other questions, jump off of what your fellow artists say and all that. Keep it casual. Okay.
Great. Let me take that for a second here. Okay. We have our list of questions here. I wanted to go to one. And because I think it's kind of like an over question that has been answered and asked by kind of like everything which also, we made this Google slideshow collaboratively, and someone came in and modified this. It said, "What does furry offer?" And someone changed it to say, "What does furry otter?" It was you. Okay. So, and it's great. The otters have something to say too. But I think of this as kind of like, it's a broad question that I think all of this is addressing is like why are we doing this? What's important about it? What is kind of compelling about being a furry, about making art about furry, about engaging in this? So I felt like it would be kind of like silly to ask that in the middle of a bunch of questions that will kind of answer it. But it's something I think that am interested in kind of coming back to and returning to as like a launch pad into discussion. But do you want to, how do you want to go down the line here? Yeah,
let's go down the line.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so our first question here that we had is, how do you use furry art as a tool to interpret your life? And then do you want to give your spin on that?
Yeah, I guess it was how do you kind of use furry art as a tool with which you live your life? So not just to depict or interpret your life as is, but I think we use furry art as, you could call it folk art, but as a tool that is part of our life and how we create ourselves or other things. So anybody who wants to jump in on that? How is it a part of your life?
So, as I mentioned, a lot of my work really touches on these topics of, gender, sexuality, kink. And a lot of these topics I represent in a way that is very heightened or at risk of being almost sensationalized or heightened or something. I don't know. I said the same word twice. What? Or idealized. There's the word. But in some way, it's still referential to a deeper this deeper truth. And I think I want to use this sort of amplification to amplify the truth, and using furry as this sort of escapism, this heightening thing that you can escape to feel good. But the world that I am trying to make is close enough to our own world, but just things are a little bit better, that maybe you can loop out of that escapism once you're done reading it and ask yourself, well, how can I apply this to my life? How can I take that escapism and put it toward something useful? So in my case, these two slides are a great example for the example where it's like, okay, we've got, it's a little coffee shop drama, and but we have these offhand remarks about it being a co-op, and sort of the, this really, I'm kind of like teaching my porn reading audience, like, hey, here's a rough outline of what a co-op is and how it operates. Or this offhanded remark about like universal basic income, and sort of like how that could restructure the life for this main character who, like, she doesn't feel like she needs this job, but that it would simply be nice because she just wants structure in her life. And so I guess it's kind of an answer to the question of like, how could things be a little bit better?
Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I think like this might be a sentiment that's shared among folks who kind of like have this experience of like being of these two worlds that feel like they can't coexist at first. So there's kind of like, so I remember going through school, I, was learning a lot about like, contemporary art, and I, sort of had this, I was learning a lot. It was great. I don't like come from an academic background, so there was something kind of like both like freeing and like exciting about learning about contemporary art, queer art, and queer theory, and also something that also felt very like alienating and scary, that like this kind of part of myself that was sort of interested in furry felt like it was something that could never be like sort of joined with that other part. And I, took like years and years and years of sort of like slowly relearning, like, kind of just, this journey of like self-acceptance and all that to get there. And I think there was something about, furry art, both, in the sense of like, furry folk art, or, these different categorizations, like, and this sort of wave of like furry contemporary art that's like trying to use these like aesthetics and kind of what's the word, just like strategies of like world building, or uniquely furry ways of looking at the world, and like fantasy and things like that, and using that as a lens to examine like the world that we're in, and seeing like what does this, like, what do furry, like, what does like macro have to say about like a power fantasy of like of an oppressed person, or like a subaltern desire. Like what does that say? What do these sort of like semiotics or meanings that we attach to animals, like our personas, like what does that say about the conditions of life that we live in? Like I think just like what am I trying to say? Like sort of like unique furry art forms, like fursuits and things. I think are this like really beautiful expression of like embodiment. It's something that's like super unique. It's like a form of performance. It's sculpture. It's like, and it's also like deeply personal. So I think I'm really interested in those things. And these kind of like furry like technologies and like how what they have to say about bodies and race and gender and just ecology, politics. For me personally, like I'm just interested in things like just unique kind of like furry terminologies and things that we engage with on the daily, and how we can sort of use those as ways of just understanding the world that we're in.
Zephyr, can I want to follow up on something you said, talking about kind of like the power fantasies that like making this art can kind of help one engage in, and thinking about something that Juniper was kind of talking about, going into the kind of mythologies that we have about different animals. I think that, like dragons feature very prominently in your work. Can you talk some about like what the kind of symbol of the dragon means for you in this kind of like expression of fantasy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is like an amazing exercise for like everybody in this room to like try out if you haven't already, and especially if you're like feeling kind of art blocked or something, like just kind of taking your fursona, like species, writing that down, and then just kind of like going wild with all of the associations that sort of spring out forth from that. So for me, like a dragon is like this kind of like chimeric sort of creature that is like both like this sort of like medieval OC, if you will. Like it's not a real creature, and yet it is sort of like good point. It's also like kind of culturally like ubiquitous too. There's like this creature has like kind of made its way all over the world, and there's so many like associations that can come from that, like and the flexibility sort of the dragon to kind of like encompass all of that, I think is really fascinating to me. Like a dragon. A couple months ago at a thrift store, like I found this little 7-Eleven cup that had like it was like a vintage cup that it was like dragon, and it was like a picture of a dragon and like some dragon facts, and it was like it was talking about like they love sitting on piles of gold and like stealing maidens and like being super powerful. And I think there's like kind of this way that this creature can become like a form of critique for like thinking about like the hoarding of wealth, like a billionaire or something like that. But it can also be this sort of like hybrid, for me, like thinking about this as like this, like sort of aspirational creature that can, just be like this, what's the word? Like a creature that like exists sort of like outside of these sort of like mundane concerns that we deal with as like folks who are like marginalized or just those sorts of things. I think I got a little away from that, but you get the idea.
To the next question. So a lot of Yeah, I'll put them. Yeah, a lot of people today have engaged with furry history in different ways. So I wanted to ask, how does the history of furry affect your work, and or what maybe other histories show up in your work, specifically like specific artists, conversations, the histories of the furry community, of the erotic language we've developed, of ways of representing bodies that we've developed. And yeah, please be specific of what those kinds of influences or what legacies you might be responding to.
Well, I feel like there's like another way to think of this question is I've heard some artists phrase it as like who is it the what is it, the many mothers of your heart or something like that. It's like what are the histories that you feel like you yourself are responding to with your work, and also in conjunction with furry histories. Okay, thank you.
I feel like I'm responding in longer form work, responding to like histories written about me by people that don't know me, to put it very, very generally and politely. Yeah.
It's for you guys to talk.
Yeah. So like I thought about like different like history periods of furry art that like I've like looked at online, and it's so wild that there's like medieval manuscript of people like drawing themselves with like animal heads and stuff, and it's just like they were like ancient furries. They were literally just been furries for like millennia. People are drawing themselves as animal people, and I feel like I'm more in like the like new school, very influenced by like reading online furry comics I probably wasn't supposed to when I was like a teenager in high school and everything. I was like very much like I was reading all this stuff, and I like in my mind like I didn't know that I could like explore that and have that also. I just kind of engaged with it as like, oh, cool, comics. This is a different form of comics. And then like I thought about it more seriously, and it's like I think I've been like just like kind of missing out on it. So for the like history of it, I think you can like get into it like a lot of different ways. Yeah.
So one of the first things I kind of noted when I discovered the furry fandom in my youth was that like, oh, this seems to be an online community that is in orbit around art and around comics. And not only that, but as I've looked deeper into the history of this, the limited history, it has taken funny animals, this thing that has really appealed to me throughout like my entire life, and has turned it into something that can be serious, that can acknowledge serious topics, that can acknowledge and represent sex and sexuality. My mind goes to Omaha the Cat Dancer as an example of just like one of the first ones to do it. And I feel like my art is not only a sort of celebration of that culture or a desire to join in on that aspect of furry, but also a response to what I felt was lacking from a lot of the stuff specifically more the porn comics that I was reading in that upbringing, that a lot of them sort of went straight to the point, because that's ultimately the point of pornography. And but the story, the character development, and ironically the humanity was lacking or secondary. And I think a lot of my art or my comics and writing responds to that in terms of just like, well, this is the thing that I feel was missing, because like I want to care about what's happening, and I want everything to exist, I guess, somewhat of equal value. I don't know how to put that. And then, I don't know, I guess I just believed that like if you are writing, making an entire comic about a sexual encounter and heightening it, that if it's remarkable enough to make that story, that it needs to have why wouldn't it have some sort of like takeaway or something to be learned or something to like imbue upon your spirit and identity? And I don't know. There we go.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
I feel like that's something in furry porn comics, that there is a level of depth to and characterization, consent, or explicitly playing with it. There's like a richness to it that is often not seen in other porn comics or things like that. Do you feel like there is something in either furry history that has led to that? Is there something in furry language or aesthetics that makes that possible?
Well, it's funny
Do you
because
disagree with me?
no, I think honestly, I could have just been like looking at the wrong art, because, looking back further into furry comic history, you have like associated student bodies, which is like all character drama and development, and there's also sex. And then also things like I was reading like Out of Position by Kyle Gold, which is very, it's sexy, but it's also got tons of character development and sort of the explanation for like, why are they in a relationship? Why are they having sex? What is the fallout of this? Etc. There's so many more books about that couple that I didn't read yet. And then even in the era that I was reading, there were comics like, say, ones by Art Decade that I think definitely had a lot of that, just like, oh, this is a character I care about, even if they were brief. Or like Little Buddy by Mish is always a big one for me in terms of just like, oh, wait, we understand how we got here, how we got to the sex scene, and it matters. And there's like something to be gained from this, rather than just like, I don't know. I don't know how like naughty I'm allowed to be in this scholarly environment, but
The sun is down. You can say the F word.
no way.
No.
At the Pacific Lutheran University.
Yeah, exactly.
Who have been very great to us, and we are so kind, so thankful. Okay. What do we have here next? Yeah. Do you want me to do how I wrote it and then how you rewrote it?
No, number 4. Oh, wow. No, that's not. No, let me just try it.
Okay,
Let's
go
keep
for it.
Simple. That's not the one I rewrote.
Okay.
Okay. But this is a question that I've asked at some different panels and things, and it's always. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe, but it's basically beyond anthropomorphism, beyond anthropomorphic animals. How do you see your work as being furry? Like, because I'll just say, I feel like there is a furry sensibility that shows up again and again. It's hard to pin down, but I feel like there's something that is not just about anthropomorphic animals that's come out of this community and people's experiences in it, and I'm wondering if and how that shows up in your work.
I think there's a certain self-examination that furries have that non-furry work doesn't. Like, if I read a book about humans that are based in a specific place at a specific time, it's going to be about that, and it's hard to escape that, and it's hard to. I think it's easier within anthropomorphic animals just to. I mean, it feels so general after this long day of wonderful speeches about what this is all about. It's just easier to insert yourself into that space, and I think there's just a greater awareness in the content and in what the reader experiences.
Yeah, I'm like super grateful to like all the like presenters who came before us too, that kind of like laid this groundwork already, like in an amazing, incredible way. That like I think Tommy, you were talking about this kind of lens of looking through at furry that is similar to kind of like Sarah Ahmed's concept of orientation. So kind of similar to thinking something that comes up a lot, I think, when talking to a non-furry person, where they're kind of right out the gate just having sort of these preconceived notions of what that means, whatever that might be. And one of the kind of responses that that I've heard you say, Tommy, is furry. Furry is so much like a. I hope I'm not butchering this. Furry is so much like a kink that it is that like a sexuality is a kink. If that makes sense. Yeah. Sorry, I'm really butchering it. But just thinking about it more of furry, being an orientation, and in a similar sense as a sexual orientation, but also the literal word orientation being you're turning towards something, and you're using that as a as the framework for engaging with the world. So yeah, I think that's kind of the through line that I see in all the work of the folks up here and other furry artists is using furry as more of that it's not necessarily about always about just an anthropomorphic animal per se, but kind of using this applying this framework in a broader sense.
I just want to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Sarah Ahmed's work, the orientation, it's sort of desire without an object. It's we're heading in a direction, but we don't exactly know what the goal is. Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, just to also kind of tee it up, I think something that I see in a lot of furry work and in y'all's work here is, one thing, for lack of a better term, kind of as a starting point, to be extremely online, or to be extremely media saturated as kind of a starting point, a foundation of the kind of world that you are building with your work on top of that. And I see that in different ways, in what the kind of culture that you absorb in your work, Willow, or Jesse, or Zephyr, or Julia. All of that, I think, is kind of foundational in some way. I wonder does that feel kind of resonant to you, this kind of media saturation in your work? Does that make sense? Does what media saturation means?
Not to me right now.
Okay, Jesse, does that make sense to you? I think. Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about just the foundation of that originally, or probably a foundational in all our lives, pop culture as almost the background noise that we're coming out of?
Yeah. I think by media saturation, I mean, I think of to be a furry is to have a very intense connection with media, whether that be comics or cartoons or artwork, all these other things. You kind of have to be pretty voracious to kind of find the love in furry, I think, as a base level. And I think all of you kind of have different soil of what that saturated media is. It seems like you go for it, please.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of plain spoken answer to the larger question ties into that a lot of my I am a furry, and all of my work is inspired by and sort of influenced by other furry works. It is this sort of cyclical, almost feedback loop, and I am then making work for furries to exist in a sphere that is just the furry fandom, in the furry sphere, with no real desire to break orbit from that. And so in that way, it could be furry in the sense that it exists sort of in this almost cultural isolation, and yeah, no and, just kidding.
Can you go to some of Jesse's work?
Yes.
Jesse, in your work, there's, in your, how do we refer it? Your media work, and in your furry work, there is a lot of, I think, exploration of this kind of like language of and practice of like advertising, and I think that it isn't just love and it isn't just hate, but I think that there is a kind of, interesting celebration and criticism of this kind of like advertising language. I wonder how you, factor that.
Well, sure. I mean, as I watched a lot of TV growing up, I have some friends that were, one friend who's an artist who was raised in the Catholic Church, and even though he no longer participates in the Catholic Church, he says that the aesthetics and the ceremonial aspects of it really influence his work. I had a largely irreligious upbringing, but I was, like every American, exposed to a lot of advertising at all times, and I can't help but be influenced by those modes of presentation and spectacle. My boyfriend and I love to watch like really old TV ads from the 70s and 80s, and then like a regular ad comes on, and we're like, oh, skip this, stop. I want to look at, when you remove it from the current context, when you have a little bit of distance, art direction and motion graphics still have a lot of power. When I was growing up, one of my favorite magazines was Zillions, which was a Consumer Reports for kids. I mean, it didn't take me long to move on to the adult version of it, because it, really fiercely examined, a key component of American life, which is, how do I not get swindled? How do I not get screwed over by people in power on like the most superficial level? Just buying stuff in a store, like the toothpaste at the Target downtown is 5 cents more expensive than the toothpaste in the suburbs. Why is that? And so I have a lot of, it's a complicated feeling to engage with that mode of expression, for sure.
Yeah, it's making me think about a couple of things that we've kind of touched on here already. I think like the uncanny valley is something that I think about a lot in relation to furry. To think about like the attraction to furry, the appeal of furry pornography. I think for me and for a lot of folks I've talked to, has to do with being raised in America or in the world more just broadly that is very puritanical, that sex is a very kind of like frightening, shameful thing to think about or to desire or to see, and that, furry pornography, by crossing, the uncanny valley, by being so clearly far from reality, allows like a kind of a safer experience of sex or desire for sex. And I was thinking about your work, and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's kind of like a similar connection to the language of advertising, that you kind of play with in your work, that it's like, it's so far from actually being like manipulated by advertising into making a purchase or making any kind of like decision, that it's kind of been fully aestheticized and I don't know, neutered in a way that it is no longer kind of threatening and can just be enjoyed.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, well, something that came up in those various responses is like that there's so many ways of talking about furry as being on the border of things. Obviously, anthropomorphic animals, that's where you start, but also, talking about identifying with advertising, but also, rejecting it, the idea of disidentification or the idea of furry personas being me, but it's also a fantasy. It's also not me. It's me and not me. So I'm gonna question for Julia is I feel like in your comics, the way you represent yourself like really embodies so much about that ambiguity of the persona. Is it me? Is it not me? What does this allow me to do? You know, you can do anything, but maybe you're, you know, just gonna, you know, do something very mundane, or what do you allow yourself to do in those comics? What do you not? What do you share? What do you not? There's a lot of ambiguity. Can you talk about that in your work?
Yeah. Could I get the question
That's a great
again?
question.
Sorry. Like
Yeah.
just like kind of shorter. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, I think, you know, this is kind of like a good like thing to jump off here.
Yeah.
You know, we were kind of like short version of this question that exploded into that was, is Julia a persona for you?
Yeah.
You know, like where is the line between reality and fiction for your work?
It's just really whatever I set it to. I used to do like very, very literal autobiography comics in high school, and it was like kind of fun, but like it just didn't like feel like it didn't feel like it had a zest of life, I guess. And so like I think I live a pretty somewhat exciting life, but like I like to reflect that a bit in my art. And if I can draw a world where I'm a dog and I'm like kind of like having a good time, that feels pretty good. I just feels like I feel like I've made a lot of art about how sad I am, and I think that's great to do. I think that I've done that. I felt like I did that so much where I was like, I should probably try to make art about me feeling happy and fulfilled, and try to do that, and I'll probably feel more happy and fulfilled and like myself. And if I'm reflecting myself in my art as fully out as I can be, I will feel better about myself. And it turns out that is what happens when you let yourself fully express yourself. There's like been instances where I posted like a comic where I'm like, oh, I don't know, this is like a bit too like personal, this is a bit too intimate, I don't know. But then like I get like a lot of people telling me that they really like it, and that they see a part of themselves in that. And I think I like draw myself as such an ambiguous looking dog that people can like try to project their own kind of creature onto this. I've had a lot of people like be like, oh yeah, you have a cat Sona. It's like, no, I have a dog Sona actually. Actually, I'm a dog, more like a dog than you think. And I think I reflect that pretty. I think I reflect that in my art as much as I can. I try to make jokes about being a dog. There's been a lot of instances in my life where people think that I'm something else or someone else, or like a different ethnicity or gender. And I think being able to be like, nope, this is me, this is who I am, and I reflect that in my art is like, I don't know, just really empowering to anybody. Yeah. I was just letting it go.
There's one follow-up for Julia
Cool.
is you said, you know, I want to do comics about feeling good and representing yourself the way you want to be seen. A lot of people talk about their persona as like idealized, but in your comics it's still warts and all. There's still failure in there. There's still life's still a mess, and it doesn't have to be. It's your comic. So why do you hold on to that?
Because I think that it just reflects that like. Yeah, I have misfortunes in life too, and I think sometimes that can be pretty funny. There's just like things that happen in life that you have to just like kind of like take in stride. I don't know. There's been a lot of instances where I felt like very devastated by something, and if I can try to put a positive spin on it, generally I can come back around and start feeling better about myself. I think it feels a little better than self-wallowing, which I admittedly do a lot. So, but I think being able to build myself up in my persona to, I don't know, just be the kind of strong dog woman that I want to be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have, a question, kind of like a springboard that I'm interested to see if this resonates for folks. I was thinking about your work, Willow, but I want to keep it open to everybody and in broad terms here. But so there's this quote that I think about from artist Nayland Blake, who is, has been mentioned earlier here. Wonderful. We don't have any pictures of Nayland Blake's work, but their work is, very steeped in kind of kink and fetish culture. And they, regarding their work, they said, "My artwork is not a reflection of my sexuality; it is the practice of it." And I wondered, how does being a porn artist feel? Like not just reflecting your, so it's kind of a vulnerable question, I suppose. So feel free to, I don't know, phone it in. No, but I think that, if we also just think of sexuality, maybe we can broaden that to desire, that how does your work not only express or reflect your desires, but does it also satisfy those kind of desires? Sorry, I know it's so late. Or shape them, sure. Sorry, it's so late.
I know. I had something. Just for a second.
Yeah, you can get back there.
Yeah. Hi, okay, I thought of something. When I think about sex in my life, the sex that I've had and the good and bad experiences, the ultimate takeaway is that this is an extremely vulnerable space to be in. And so I think sort of a large part of my expression of like my sexual needs actually takes more shape of like the environment in which they happen, and is largely part of why a lot of my narratives are so, when it comes to the pornography, the actual like sex scene is so, there is so much like explicit consent, there is so much safety, there is so much like friendliness and warmth that needs to happen, because that is the environment in which like that vulnerability really kind of cultivates the greatest change or the greatest growth of your identity or your sexual self. And yeah, there's a great example. Thanks for putting this in. I threw pictures in at like 11 p.m. last night. So this is, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, to kind of like piggyback off of that, like I love that quote by Nayland Blake so much. I think that's also something about like a lot of furry art that is really in touch with this like concept of the erotic, like in kind of like Audre Lorde terms, which is like, so it's not necessarily like a sexual form of eroticism, but just like something that like that feeling that it's like very hard to describe, but that compelling, burning feeling inside of you that draws you to whatever it draws you to, and I love that about furry art. Like I love how it's like we don't like as living human beings, we don't necessarily need to have sex or to survive technically, to live, like you won't starve to death. And I feel kind of a simpler way about like this like making art, and I feel this like desire to sort of protect that and like sort of resist these like contemporary forces like like AI and things that are kind of trying to take that away from us. Like this like it's not like, you know, we could survive, you know, not making art and just kind of you know, whatever, foregoing that to you know, AI or whatever, but I think like our souls would die, and I think that like furry artists kind of know that on a deep level that I really appreciate.
Just thinking about that is also, I think, something I see in furry pornography is that it's social. I mean, I don't know, when you're looking at furry porn and you're like, oh, I know that person, you know? Or like, oh, those are my friends. They commission this for each other. And like, it is actually, the pornography is part of a social erotic language. It's not an individual kind of thing. But you're right, we could just automate that. That would be great.
Yeah, and to add on, I mean, just to think about the, like, what is special about a furry and what allows for, like, you know, I think it is a really, like, it's an annoying question to receive as a furry, but it is interesting for us to consider among ourselves what is the connection to sex in furry, and what, you know, what makes it so, you know, I was gonna say what like lubricates the system, you know, for you know, like, for effective, like, interesting and like safe and enjoyable like conversations and displays and expressions of sex. And I think, you know, the difference between seeing a photo of your naked friends having sex to seeing a photo of your friends in fursuit having sex to seeing a commission of your friends, you know, like having sex is an illustration. Like there's so many like levels of like kind of like safe barriers to the intimacy of sex while still like getting to experience or share the joy of sex that I think is like pretty unique to furry experience. I want to start opening up to both to questions, you know, across the board from and to each other. One kind of broad question we had here was what resonated with you from the conference. So just as an open thing for you to, I know, obviously everything, the plant, et cetera. I feel like we have like a jawbreaker that we're gonna go take home and like, you know, lick and put in the fridge and it'll get gross and we'll have it for 100 years. That's what the information feels like. Just off the dome right now. But I also want to open up to questions from the audience and you know, as we kind of wind down here. So all of these things kind of interplaying. So no pressure to come up with something, but if anything's burning, please come up. Or I don't know if has anyone been taking a look at our online questions? There's two? Okay. Awesome. We can start with one of those, or?
Yeah, we could put a mic in there.
Yeah. Yeah, can you hand that over? Oh, sure. Well, but let's put it, Space, can you take this mic just so any audience members can come up? Thank you. Okay, we'll take one from here first. To the panel. Is this still going? It's not sounding like it's off. Anyway, it's off. It's off. Okay. Hello? Oh, sorry. That's all good. To the panel, while queerness is often explored in furry, how do you bring racial inclusion when race isn't apparent? E.g., how would you depict a Thai character? This is the question. Thank you.
Can I get that one more time?
You hear the question one more time? While queerness is often explored in furry, how would you bring racial inclusion when race isn't apparent in furry character?
Thank you. I have like I've like explored a bit of that with like creating different like personas for myself. Just kind of like looking at like my own cultural like folklore about animals and stuff. I don't have the exact words right now because I don't have any notes with me. But I have done that. Yeah. To answer how would I depict a Thai character, I'm not sure.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think I think about this a lot, and I like furry has been like an amazing and fruitful way for me to explore like my mixed race identity in terms of thinking about like the word furry too. It like you know, kind of connotes like a texture that is somewhat, you know, blurry. Like there's not like this kind of defined edge, and I think that's like a very beautiful like way to think about and kind of take apart these ideas. And I think like, I don't know, like depicting yourself as a persona, I think those kinds of identities are like sort of inherently implicated in that. Like I think to like, you know, I think you know, I would want to avoid like depicting, you know, a character like a Thai character by some kind of like, or like I think we don't like necessarily need to be. This is the beautiful thing too about furry is like I feel like I've been saying that a lot, is like we don't necessarily need to be sort of like corralled by these kind of pre-existing notions of race. Like furry kind of gives us an opportunity to like ask questions beyond that or imagine other ways of being. And I think it's all valid. You know, I don't think there's a wrong way to express yourself and your identity. But maybe that's not true. But yeah, I think furry is a very like exciting and you know, I think looking back into kind of like furry history and like sort of you know, the beginnings of you know, persona creation, like, you know, race and gender and these things have kind of been in there, like from the get-go. I don't know if that answers the question.
We have a couple. Sorry, I saw Rod first, but then I see two more here.
Thank you very much. I'll answer that last question. Make them a binturong. They're awesome. Very seriously, in my writings, I don't deal with issues of race so much, but I do deal with the fact that sort of representation based on where animals live. You know, red foxes are European and gray foxes are Native Americans and things like that. So just, it's a thought. But speaking of art, I wanted to talk about something from my young days. Back in college, just down the road from where I was going to university, were two very famous comic book artists, Ken Macklin and Leela Dowling. They're not furry artists per se, but they did a lot of anthropomorphic animals as part of their comics and stuff. And I went to the head of the art department because I was taking some art classes, and I said, hey, are you aware that you've got these famous artists living just down the street? You should have them come give a talk. And I showed him some of their comic book works, and he looked at it and said, oh, no, Rodney, they're not artists, they're illustrators. Can you talk to this notion, which I've heard for a long time now, that basically if art, I swear, depicts anything that's a recognizable object, particularly a recognizable living thing, that it no longer deserves the word?
So I think that I think like academic art spaces really like like they can look at furry art or anthropomorphized art and categorize that as folk art or like child art and not take it as seriously in those realms. I think there's also like there's probably some elements behind that, like how much money is this worth? Because that's a big part of fine arts is, oh, what's the dollar like? So that's just my 2 cents on that.
I think this feels very general, but I feel that a big part of being in the academic art world as a student in undergrad and graduate studies, there's a lot of, just frankly, a lot of walls built up by people that find themselves as professors and as part of the institutions that maybe it's like, you're really gunning for that tenure, or you really want to establish yourself as a artist over a illustrator. Obviously, it depends on the creator's intent, but I think a lot of it is like sort of a haughty, like, oh, I'm not one of those people that draws for money. I sell paintings for $100,000. Yeah.
Well, we had the 2 questions that I saw before with the long, I don't know what color that is. Lavender?
Hi, I'm Charlie, or Badmon Online. Really, I look up to Julia and Tommy specifically, like, a lot. So it's really, really cool to see you guys here. And Zephyr, is that you? I gotta talk to you about dragons afterwards, dude. Like,
Closer to the mic.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm Charlie. And back to that race example. I like to reflect my hair with my persona. It's a really good way to show your identity and race. It is so important. I know they highlight that it's not really important, and in a sense of like, it's. I've always been told that race isn't supposed to reflect your persona for some reason. Really weird. But hair is so important, especially as a Black person. I'm also mixed, by the way. I'm Korean and Black, so really, really cool to see you guys up here. So, but yeah, definitely hair, I would say, and also the type of animal. Really, really good. Sorry, that's not a question, but I had to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
We had this question back here that I saw. Was that you? Yeah.
So, hi, I've asked questions before, but I never introduced myself because I'm anxious and tired. But I'm Koboldo Ryan. Y'all are amazing, and I'm truly grateful to hear from y'all. It's super amazing. This is a bit of a pointed question, because I'm fairly sure most all of y'all have experience with like specifically like academic and fine arts situations, or at the very least like some sort of background there or having to deal with it. When I was in pretty much any fine arts training, the one thing they always taught us was like, you have to mine yourself. You have to like dig deep in order to really make something that other people will care about. So my direct question is like, how do you keep your self-representation healthy, and how do you keep yourself like making stuff that you care about and you feel like you're saying something important that's not like, wow, I have to show all of my open wounds for content.
So a lot of my comics have these moments where I kind of, I've described them as the artist is now speaking, like directly to you. And a lot of those are just born out of this, like, I've had a life experience. I've gotten to the end point of that life experience, and now I'm in a moment where I'm able to reflect upon it. And now I can, like, okay, what is the, like, takeaway from that I can, like, let's put that into words and make my funny little animals take it or say it. One of which, more recently, I had a valuable lesson about dealing with a medium annoying person. Somebody who does not do anything objectively wrong. However, you just like, your skin prickles around them or something like that. And, you know, having these life experiences, having therapy sessions, having these moments of resolution, that ultimately landed me with sort of this conclusion. That was sort of the thing I put forth into the art, was like, okay, well, how do I, what is my greatest takeaway? Well, let's think about, this medium annoying person. They've done nothing objectively wrong. They are a part of my community, and therefore let's treat them with grace and kindness. And why are we doing that, and what does that look like? And that's what the words on the screen are about. Hope that answers that okay.
First of all, thanks for going on last and exhausted after an exhausting day. Yeah, keep on. I'd like to harken back to the presentation you led last year, Auryn, which was titled something like Artists in the Expanded Field, which is something we've talked about a little bit.
It was an expansion pun also.
Oh, was it really? Go ahead. It was a very big and round session, yes. But and we've talked a little bit about this, that one thing I appreciate about all of you here is that you're sort of breaking out of the furry community art bubble. If you talk about the expanded field, well, there's tens of thousands of furry artists, hundreds of thousands, depending on how you count it. So if you're in the expanded field, that means there are people who are not in the expanded field. What's the difference between the two?
So I engaged music-wise in the noise scene when I was about 19 to 20 years old. I started going to noise shows, and I don't know if you know anything about noise people, but they're probably the most outcasted weirdos in music. Generally, people look at them and are like, "What's going on with this? I don't understand." Oh, what are you just listening to buzzing sounds? And sometimes it is, but I guess oh shoot. Expanded field, right? How that so I guess when you engage in different fields of art, you can always somehow take something from that outside field into your work as a furry artist. At least I feel like. There has been noise presentations where I brought aspects of my furriness into the noise presentation, where I had a noise show in 2018, and you were there. You were there. I had a noise set where I made a PowerPoint presentation on how to turn everyone into a cat girl. And I got everybody to meow at the end. I got people wearing cat ears. I got people thinking of themselves as a cat. And I got a whole garage full of people to do that. And that felt so powerful. And to be able to do that in outside of a visual online or real life art space, and to bring that into a different kind of music, just art scene that you wouldn't expect, that kind of thing. You can pretty much take your art everywhere and try to put it into the world where they wouldn't expect a furry to be. So that's how I feel about expansive fields of art.
Yeah, so I have a response to that. I think part of that title is just kind of being funny and playing on art language, which I think is, to speak from the experience organizing Room Party, is part of what we wanted to do, is to take seriously these kinds of art that people are making in the fandom that are well, I'll say this. When we started doing Room Party, one of the things we were thinking about curating it is we're going into a gallery space, we're doing furry contemporary art, or we're speaking to outside people, and we don't want to create this hierarchy, and and we very quickly realized that's not the goal. This is actually, even though this is in a gallery space, this is really not so much for outside audiences. This is us trying to take what is valuable from that space and bring it into this community. And because as much as we can shit on the contemporary art world, like there is something that there are kinds of art practices that allow you to express things that are different, that are not necessarily what the bread and butter of traditional furry art is. And there is also now a generation of artists who are doing art that, like I said, might not be anthropomorphic even, but comes out of a furry experience or a life lived in this community. Or there's just work in mediums that, you know, don't work online, don't necessarily work at a convention, that do communicate in this, that benefit from this different kind of, that benefit from this different kind of engagement or way of interacting with the artwork. And we can create a space for that in furry and allow those kinds of practices and discourses to take place in this fandom, just like with academic language. Like we can have scholarly academic conversations here and yet not recreate that kind of knowledge hierarchy if we choose to and if we're intentional about it. And part of that with Room Party was we kind of said, like, we're gonna, like, this is an art show, but it's a furry art show, so it's kind of pretend almost. You know, like, this isn't a real contemporary art show. This is like a bunch of furries. I don't know, but that it was some sort of like taking it seriously, but a slightly ironic sensibility, and really trying to be clear that this is art that maybe works differently, and we want to make space for those new voices, but that is not a hierarchy against any other kinds of art practices of which, you know, we, like my fursuit that Lane made. That has done more for me personally than, you know, almost any piece of art. That is a piece of art that I lived through. No hierarchy there, but there's different kinds of sculptures that can work differently in a gallery, and we should have space for that in this community and do it in our own way, I think. So, and it's a pun on expansion.
Just to expand on that, getting real big. Yeah, we all understand the reference. But I think a useful concept too here is talking about in regards to art, and this also comes back a little bit to like what can sometimes seem like a I don't know, an opaque or stuck up differentiation between illustration and, you know, so-called fine art, is thinking about, you know, art as object or window. So there's, you know, there's kinds of artwork like illustration, a lot of like furry digital illustration, where when we look at this piece of artwork, of media, we are not looking at, you know, often the brush strokes or the material of it. We are looking at the thing that it is depicting, and we are kind of being transported into a scene, into an experience, you know, in our imagination, aided by artwork. And then, you know, when you have on the opposite end, you know, maybe not completely on the opposite end, but an object we have in front of us here, the piece from Zephyr, the dragon in the back here, where yes, there is an experience of an illustration, right? We see an illustration of a dragon, but it is also about the materiality of this pink foam. And I think that was a big thing that Room Party brought to furry scene from the art world is, you know, by being in physical space and by having a variety of different kind of materially produced artworks, there was, you know, a lot more. Like, I think being in that space, you became a lot more sensitized to, you know, what these depicted artworks, you know, almost everything in there was, did depict a figure of some sort or a scene. We were still also kind of like encouraged to pay attention to the material that creates this illusion of a scene in front of us. So I think that's something that the fine art space, like whether it's right or not, it privileges over and kind of separates itself from illustration in that way. So let's steal from that, but not keep the hierarchy.
Yes.
You can't walk around something on your computer.
Exactly, except for in VR chat, where we're doing amazing things. So big and round. Okay, I think we are nearly just about at time. Unless anyone has the burningest question, I think we can. All right, yeah. Yeah, you've got the tools.
This
You've got the tools.
is, I guess, a bit of a shorter, less deep question. But is there anything that any of you are interested in or engaged in outside of your artwork that you find influences your art in any way?
I'm back. I do music. I've mentioned that before. I've been doing music now live for about like 10 years, I think. And I would definitely say that making music and being on a stage has definitely made me feel a bit like a show dog. Not gonna lie. So I think that influences it a bit in some ways. I guess like I also like I've like painted like just like backgrounds of like just like nature and stuff, and I think being able to figure out what kind of textures I can like make with the brushes that I got really can just like what's the word influence the way that I paint like textures and fur and stuff. So painting and doing music, I think. I also did some embroidery. That was pretty cool too. That's kind of like doodling on your clothes, basically. And in like a more like everyone kind of likes it when they see it kind of way. Like I feel like when I drew on my clothes in Sharpie, all my mom and everybody got mad at me. But if you embroider it, people think it's really fancy for some reason. So that's okay to do. Yeah. I'd say those are ways that it's influenced my art in a way. Yeah.
Sure. Outside of my very digital art illustrative practices and full-time job, I do wheel-thrown ceramics. And it's maybe sort of a cop-out answer as to how it influences my main body of work, but I find it to be something that exists kind of opposite and in balance with the main body of my work, which is very focused on, organic bodies and, sort of this conceptual, incorporeal sort of meaning or use. And comparing that to making a mug that has to have a certain kind of structure that a lot of how I throw things, it's very just like more design oriented. I think helps me feel, like all of my work is in balance with each other, but because I'm like creating on equal sides, something both, the use of it is sort of difficult to describe versus something that it has a very clear utilitarian use. Both of those kind of exist in tandem and inspire each other in that they both kind of like give creative energy back to me.
A couple of years back, I really got into weaving on looms. Really intense. It's a great loom back there in the corner. Shout out to Loom. Yeah, thank you. It's really an ancient technology, and as someone from a media art background, where it feels like a lot of the stuff you do is like kind of similar to gag comics, where it's like, oh, I hope no one has already done this. Like you're not going to do anything new with a loom or on a loom, pretty much. And it's really freeing to be in that space. And even though my interest in it like dropped off severely, I still enjoy making stuff on a loom from time to time. And it's I really recommend anyone that's like also an artist and like really stuck on one medium to do something else for a while, even if it doesn't immediately make sense. It really helps.
I'm really struggling with this question because I think at this point in my life, like I feel like everything that I do is sort of related to like art in some way. So it's hard for me to think of, it just feels completely entangled. But one thing that I've been really, excited about, and I think this kind of, touches a little bit on Jack's question as well, is kind of running this sort of DIY artist residency project that me and Tommy are co-directing. It's kind of in a lull right now since as we know, the art funding situation in the U.S. is like not so hot, but to say the least. This is kind of a project that is near and dear to my heart and feels like something that fulfilling this desire to sort of like steal these strategies and methodologies from like this contemporary art world and bring them to furries, and also and vice versa. Like I think kind of demonstrating like the contemporary, like not to shit on contemporary art more, but let's do it. It's bad out there. Like it's the scene feels very gutted, and there is this kind of vitality in the furry community and furry art, and I want to like be extra clear to like make this point of like furry, when we throw around terms like furry folk art and things like that, it's not like a judgment call of saying that that is somehow beneath these like contemporary art that is engaged with the world. Like I think furry has this like kind of beautiful like leveling effect in that we when we engage, if we just get a commission of our fursona like drawn super sexy like that, I think that's like a beautiful engagement with your life, and on the same level as like a very like art piece you would see in a museum or something. I think that the art world needs a little bit of like an injection of that, and it's really exciting to see things like Room Party kind of like doing that. Like I think the contemporary art world needs to have fursuit sex is what I'm trying to say. So keep doing what you're doing, you beautiful, beautiful beasts.
That was applause bait. I think that will wrap it up for us. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
Surviving on these microwaved brains at the end of this day.
Thank you.
So we have closing remarks from Hazel. Something I will also add, please take a picture with Minerva, our Furry Studies conference mascot back here. She's great. They're great. They're non-binary. It's the end of the day, okay? All right, well, I'll hand it over to Hazel.
Let's just take a deep breath for a second. Is that okay? It was a long day, but also a really beautiful day. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's just here. Thank you to the presenters for your amazing work. Thank you to the artists who brought their works here. Thank you for who bringing all the zines here and everything. I just say thank you to everybody for everything that you've done to make this possible. Thank you to the PLU Tech team again for all the work that you're doing. Thank you to PLU itself. Thank you to everybody, and I want to end with just a couple of notes for all of you. Oh, notes for all of you. I just want to end with a couple of just thoughts, which is just, this is the second time we're doing this, and already it's been such a joy just to be a part of it, but also just to see the growth of all this, and to see the participation, and just, honestly, not to be corny, but like all the love that's gone into this. And then, I've been to so many different academic conferences, and this is the best one. And I'm not biased, but like it's fun, it's interesting, and it's intriguing, and it's wonderful, and it's lovely, and it's just full of warmth, but also full of like intriguing critical thoughts that are challenging me all the time. All these panels, everybody, all the work that you do is extremely challenging in the best way possible. And all of us are just so weird and wild and feral, and it's made me really excited to just continue this work for myself. And if you are doing this work continually, or now interested in doing this kind of work, or just a part of this, or maybe you're not even a furry in here, and maybe you're an MFT or social work, who knows? But like, I hope you are, inspired by all of this. And so, again, if anybody wants to, or has any curiosity of wanting to get involved in this, please let us know. Also, at the same time, as we exit, just kind of tidy up after yourself, pack in all that kind of stuff. At the same time, also, afterwards, there's restaurants close by for food. If you want anything, there's a great Vietnamese restaurant really close. There's a great Italian restaurant nearby. It's really close on campus. So always feel free to look out for dinner. Also, at the end of this, I would like to have maybe all of us do a group photo, if that's cool with everybody. Those who survived, if that makes sense. A lot of people left, but also online for folks who are still lingering. Thank you so much for being here. Those who left, thank you for coming when you did. And that's all I have for all of you. Oh, yes, also, and then also, it's a great, awesome queer rave tonight. So there's flyers in the back for all that as well. What's that? Yeah, queer furry rave, which is going to be great too. So that's also going to be happening. Starts at 8, ends at 2, so you have a lot of time. They're not associated with us, but they encourage us to advertise, so just in community. Flyers are back there, also spread around. Other than that, that's all I have for you. Thank you all so much for being here. Yeah. Thank you all. And